Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you, and on this video I'm returning to Gilmore Girls. This is season 1 episode 11 and it is called Paris is Burning, which is a pop culture reference in itself because there's a documentary called that which I've not seen but I hear is very good. And obviously it's double meaning because it refers to Paris as in the character. So she's not actually in the episode that much, but quite a big Paris episode in some ways. The main plot is to do with Lorelai and her relationship with Max and the complications that throws up. And I'll get into that in a moment, but I'll actually start by talking about Paris and her part in this episode. Because actually we are now starting to get into the real sort of meat of Paris as a character and how she's going to like relate to Rory and their sort of like friendship / relationship, if you want. Because Paris, I've probably said this in the previous video, but she's one of my favourite characters on the show. I absolutely love the actress and just one of the most enjoyable, entertaining characters on Gilmore Girls. A really great supporting character and interesting friend for Rory. Some really great dynamics there. So the episode title refers to the fact that Paris is kind of having an emotional breakdown because her parents are getting a divorce, and this being the sort of school it is, Chiltern. Basically the whole school are like gossiping about it, talking about it. We see Tristan at one point kind of being quite sort of mean and narky, and probably that hurts Paris even more coming from him, because we know from the previous episode she has a crush on Tristan. So it's really awful for Paris. She's really obviously suffering because of it. And we also see then her like close friends Louise and Madeline, who I think in the previous episode had a bit of a moment with Rory where they complimented her dress at the dance. So they're actually starting to warm to Rory. So I think that kind of like puts Paris's back up even more. The fact then, because there's a nice little reference to Heathers actually, because when Rory tells Lorelai, then Madeline and Louise were actually quite nice to me at school. She's like, "You're the new Heather." So one of many great references in this episode. So that kind of makes things worse. It's this whole thing of her social circle sort of starting to like collapse. But Paris basically gets her back and it spirals out of control. And what happens is later in the episode we get like a parent-teacher event at Chiltern. And it's this big thing because it like builds this drama between Lorelai and Max, because she's kind of considering like not seeing him anymore, ending it. So it becomes this big thing where she's nervous to go because of having to face up to it. So their situation comes to a head where after he's given like his presentation to the parents and kids, they have a big sort of heart to heart where he basically calls her out on the fact that she's trying to break up with him, and not being honest about it, not being upfront, because she's kind of avoided him, came up with excuses not to see him. And it's sort of this nice sort of like realistic thing where not only Max has cottoned onto it, but Rory has, and also Suki, who we see in this episode, because she has like this funny little scene where she kind of says, well, this is your 2-month thing with guys. You get to 2 months and things are sort of going too nicely, and you just find you get nervous about it and you find a reason to break up with them. And there's this whole bit with McCarthy where she does like Ricky Martin sort of songs, because she has this great line about like the 2-month relationship dance for you. So it's actually a pretty funny scene. But it leads to Lorelai and Max like kissing. Like she tries to break up with him. He like calls her out on it because he basically says, "Is it about hurting Rory?" Which is like Lorelai's excuse, or is it about hurting you? And I think he cuts to the meat of the matter, because it is more about Lorelai's anxiety and nerves about, can she really trust a guy? Is this right? I mean, I'm sure the impact on Rory, the fact that he's a teacher and stuff, I'm sure that does factor into it. But it does seem then it's more about Lorelai and her anxiety over like long-term relationships, which is actually interesting because they've sort of switch that stereotype around, because a lot of times in like dramas and TV and stuff, it's normally the man who has that sort of anxiety. So I quite like them. They sort of play with that stereotype. But anyway, getting to the point, they kiss out of passion. It's because they're obviously really into each other. We've seen earlier in the episode, because the opening sort of bit is they're having dinner and I think it's his house, but things are going really well and they are flirting, and that then leads to Lorelai getting nervous. So they kiss randomly in the classroom. They succumb to passion, and it's a really like kind of powerful moment. But then Paris walks by and she sees it, and that's like the turning point. And that's where her reaction to seeing this and this new information, this new scandal, is kind of digs into like one of her key like vulnerabilities, because it's like she's been like scandalized in the school, she's been like gossiped about, and becomes like a figure of public fun sort of thing, public like mockery. So she decides, this is a chance for me to reverse it. And in a way, it's not about Rory. I know Paris and Rory have had their sort of like set twos, and they've been rivals up to now. But it's actually not about the fact that it's Rory's mum. It's just to do with Paris has an opportunity to get the school talking about something else, and she's no longer like the figure to be mocked. So she quickly spreads the gossip about them kissing, and it sort of escalates a bit fast. It's a bit of a TV sort of scene where they're all together in this dining school, and you see Paris just tell various people, and obviously that you can sort of believe the students might act, but it seems like some of the parents are as well, and it's just like this whole room sort of chattering and kind of looking at Rory and sort of mocking her. So it escalates a bit fast, but it works well for obviously what they're doing. And so it's like there's the reverse thing where Paris tells Rory, yeah, I just seen your mum and Mr. Medina kissing, and now the whole school. So Rory then becomes the one who's embarrassed. So it does show this kind of twisted and nasty side to Paris. But also it shows a more vulnerable side, the fact that she's so cut up about the rumours going around school about her parents' divorce, then it's just like a reaction out of defence. So it's a very, in some ways, although it's a really nasty thing to do to Rory, I think at the same time there's something vulnerable about it with Paris, which is maybe shows a more sensitive human side. So that then things escalate with Rory and Lorelai, because although Rory had been encouraging her, be nice to Max, you guys seem to be really getting on, don't blow this. She obviously didn't expect to hear the news about them kissing in school, and then she becomes like the public figure of fun. But I really like the scene later, actually, when Rory deals with it with Paris, because she confronts her the next day, and she's quite blunt about it, where she sort of says to Paris, you know, I saw how hurt you were about when rumours were flying around school about you, and so how could you do that to someone? How could you then inflict the same sort of treatment? And Rory kind of nails it on the head, because she says, think of all the people you hurt. It's not just me and my mum, it's Mr. Medina. He's he's been really good to you. He's encouraged you with your essay. So I do like that speech from Rory. It really like cuts to the heart of exactly what Paris has done. And Paris actually quickly like offers an apology. She's like, "You're right. I do like Mr. Medina," and I think it's like not a wholehearted apology, but she does apologise, and you can see it's quite sincere. I think the actress does a good job, and then it turns into like this funny sort of comedy type moment where she kind of excuses it by saying, "I've just been through hell the last few weeks." And I think this really goes to the heart of Rory's character at its best, really. The fact that Rory is really sensitive and understands, even though she would have every right to like be pissed with Paris and not want to see her, not want to talk with her, she immediately like is there for Paris and is sympathetic. So it really goes to the heart of what a good-natured person Rory is, because when she saw Paris being mocked around school, she even felt sorry for her then, no matter what Paris had done to her. So Rory in this scene like offers up, do you want to talk to me anytime? I'm there for you. And it becomes this sort of comedy scene where Paris is kind of saying thing, yeah, it's unlikely basically, but if I want to, I'll ask. And she keeps like saying that as she slowly walks away, and it's like talking to them on their level, and Rory's not gonna force it. So some good stuff with Paris in this episode, and obviously things are gonna develop from there with her and Rory. So I'm excited because I do enjoy their sort of like connection and friendship. But also the central like plot of Max and Lorelai, and the fact that it has come to this head. Lorelai is putting up all these excuses about trying to end the relationship. She keeps off because at one point Rory like offers, should we go on a kind of the three of us do something like go ice skating, and Lorelai just comes up with excuses not to do it. So I do like that stuff, and I also like the fact that Emily has heard about the kiss because, of course, she knows about everything going on at Chiltern. In fact, at an earlier scene at dinner, there's this thing where Emily has already read the Chiltern newsletter, and she's like bringing it up, and Lorelai has caught her at like, what's that evil smile about? And it's obviously because she's read it, she knows about the parent daughter or parent teacher, whatever it is, evening. Because there's a funny line that says, well, if you read page 2, you would know about the parent daughter talent contest. But then later that pays off really nicely, because Emily then has heard about the kiss, of course, because she hears about everything at Chiltern, and her and Lorelai has like a set to. And see, there's a moment where you think Emily is going to be quite sympathetic, because Lorelai sort of makes it clear to her that she really likes Max, but it's kind of this again icy exchange between the two. But Emily is just like furious. She's like, yeah, keep control of your emotions. It's like you always lose control of your emotions. So as I said, things come to a head, and obviously the kiss makes things worse, because it even makes Max potentially vulnerable, because he is called, we don't see it, but he says later to Lorelai, he is called into like the principal's office, and he's sort of given a talking to, and the word probation comes up several times. So he's not actually fired at this point, but he's given a stern talking to and the potential. And I do actually like the sort of end, because Max and Lorelai have a good down to earth serious conversation about things, and they're really honest. And Lorelai appreciates that, yeah, Max's career could be in jeopardy, so they have to think about how they're going to proceed. And they agreed to put things on hold for a while and to like revisit it later. So It's pretty good stuff. It's pretty good, solid drama. I like the stuff with Lorelai and Rory. Again, I think the way Rory is kind of trying to encourage her, but then later is embarrassed by the whole kiss thing. And this is a pretty good Max episode, even though I'm not a big fan of his. I think in this episode, I think he comes across as a really sort of good, like sweet, down to earth guy. I think the drama with him and Lorelai is quite well handled. I think again quite relatable and looks into like these things of the problem of like him dating or Lorelai dating like Rory's teacher. Another thing that came up in the episode, which I didn't realise, is that actually Sookie is single at this point. She's actually not with Jackson. Now, I knew they were a long-term couple, so I always assumed that they, at the start of the show, had already been dating. But apparently not, because at one point when Sookie and Lorelai are having like this conversation about her 2 month thing with guys. Lorelai kind of harshly snaps back, "What would you know? You haven't dated anyone in years." And she immediately apologises. It's like a harsh thing. But I'm like, oh my god, I didn't realise. I assumed that Sookie and Jackson were already together. Because we see him come in and he obviously delivers the vegetables. But I never knew that there was a period at the start of the show when they weren't dating. And that's kind of... Later on in the episode, she asks him out for dinner, and he says yes, because of course he does. It's Melissa McCarthy, it's Sookie. How could he resist? So that kind of gets that sort of side in motion. And I do like the stuff with Proust, the book and stuff, which Max lends Lorelai. And yeah, her sort of quoting Michael Crichton, she says, I would love to say... what Proust would say, but I can only say what Michael Crichton could say, but that's not quite the same thing. So lots of good pop culture references in this again. Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding comes up with the ice skating bit. So, and Luke actually offers to mend Lorelai's skates, which is a nice little touch. So, really solid episode, very enjoyable, and we're starting to get really cooking, I think, with the first season of Gilmore Girls. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, like and subscribe, and get me up on Twitter. And look out for more culture or more cult retro TV reviews coming up soon on the channels. But thanks for listening, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.